I'm on a quest to find music and art. Supporting local talent is the place I start. Yeah, this is our culture, the place to be. Games, books, arts and crafts and jewelry. This the Guardians of the Geekery. 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 And now for today's episode of Guardians of the Geekery with your hosts, Matt, Carol, and Joey.
Stuart Jaffe returning to the Geekery Market on Saturday, November 9th. Oh my gosh. Rain or shine, 30,000 square feet of crazy, geeky goodness, and then some. 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Cabarrus Arena and Event Center. Hey, if you can, bring a canned good or non-perishable item for the Second Harvest Food Bank. That's our charity. And so it really would appreciate it, and it helps out. Or you can, we have suggested cash donation of $2. The other great thing about this venue, if you've come to our past iteration in the last couple of years before we moved to the Cabarrus Arena Event Center, we have a ton of parking. It is just massive, and it's right in front of the building. Amazing, and lots more handicap spaces as well. So very excited about all that stuff that's really important to everybody. But hey, enough of that. I want to dive right in. Stuart, I think one of the greatest things you have is your Madhouse. It's a great little community you have on Facebook, free to join, and all the fun. But anyway, welcome back, and we're so glad to have you back.
Well, thank you. I'm really looking forward to this year's Geekery Market. Last year was the first time at the
Cabarrus.
Yes.
Cabarrus thing, and that was. I mean, I've been doing this market for I don't know how many years I've done it now, but a bunch.
Yeah.
So to move from it used to be in a much smaller venue, and to have this wide open thing, and it sounds like a silly thing that you're just like, and it's got parking, but it's got parking. It's such a huge difference, I think, for everybody. It was a great time last year, so I'm really looking forward to it this year. So
Awesome.
Yeah. Yes, 2,200 parking spaces versus 200. It's just a huge difference, even if there's another event happening that same weekend in the arena. So we are the middle building. So there's an arena, there's Gold Hall, and then we are the event center. Yes, I know, but you can't come. Sorry. But you're not fighting for spaces, where some of the other places, even though they had spaces, people are always complaining that there were never enough. So we didn't hear that complaint last year. We did hear something about the big electrical pole that went down over the highway that caused everybody that huge backup. Yeah. But we didn't hear anything about people not being able to find a space once they got there, which was amazing. And yes, and you've been to a couple, so you have definitely seen different iterations. And it was a little nerve-wracking at first because it was so big, and you were like, man, it doesn't feel like there's as many people there. But it was because they actually had room to walk around instead of all being crowded in front, which was
nice. Was a really nice thing, because you could also you had longer aisles, so everything flowed, and everything wasn't on top of each other.
Yeah.
It's a great. Last year was a great start to that new space, and as you guys get more comfortable with how you design the interior, it's going to be
no author's alley this year. No gauntlet of being pitched every single book as you walk down the aisle. We are going to intermingle you with the common folk, so people get a chance to kind of look at pretty things and then talk about books, and then look at more pretty things, and then maybe buy a freeze-dried candy, and then so only a couple authors per aisle, just to kind of break up the different types of things. Yeah. So,
but whatever. I mean, I just meant in terms of that. It's just the more you're in a space, the more you get used to what's the best.
Oh, absolutely.
You get better and better and better every year. So, if you were there last year, definitely come back this year, because it's going to just be better. And if you've never come, it's just great.
I think that's one of the hardest things that people don't always comprehend is, like, when you're looking at a space, the nice thing about returning to a space year after year is being able to tweak it as opposed to having to start from scratch every time. So I think that was and I've talked about it on the podcast a lot, but people kind of like, Joey, you look so like concentrated, because I'm sitting there on my scooter, and it's like, they're like, it's going great. And I'm like, I absolutely agree. I just want to see what else I can improve. It's like, it's so nice to know we're already going to come back here next year. Now I just have to tweak.
Yeah.
Um, and
And so you just mentioned your scooter, and that was the other thing is before, though everything was so narrow and tight, it was hard if you need a scooter or a wheelchair or anything. But this was just smooth as far as I could see.
yeah,
People moving around had no trouble, whatever their ability. So I'm
yeah,
really
and it's
pleased.
all one level, and it's concrete floors, so you're not worrying about tripping on, rugs or anything like
Mhm.
that. And um, it's we talk about handicap accessible versus handicap friendly, and it's not. There are definitely some things that the facility could do to be even more handicap friendly, but it's definitely very accessible. They have nice flat surfaces, easy ramps, lots of handicap parking. They don't have the automatic doors, so you do have to kind of rely on somebody to open a door for you. But we mentioned that to them, and they were definitely looking at budgeting that in for the future. And that, lots of bathrooms and stuff like that. And it's all, they're all ramped together. So you're not having to, once you're in, you're not having problems to do that. And putting in the 10-foot aisles definitely made sure that people could go both directions and still get around people who are pausing in front of tables. And then one of the things that we did different this year was we usually put 2 tables and then a space so that y'all don't get trapped behind there, having to walk down the gauntlet whenever you have to go to the bathroom. But we only put 2 feet spaces, and one of the wheelchair users had pointed out to me that really it should be 3 feet spaces, so that somebody with a wheelchair can go in and out easily. Because
Sure.
I have a mobility scooter, but I can get up and walk short distances. So, it's stuff like that, and kind of getting that feedback. And sometimes people are afraid to give that feedback because they think I'm going to put them on a blacklist and they'll never come back again. And that's not it. That's not what's going to put you on the list. There are other things that will put you on the list, but giving honest feedback on like accessibility issues or things that I might not have thought about will not put you on the list. It'll put you on the good list, if anything. So
enough about the
um
facility. Let's talk books.
yeah, I know. Carol's like, I'm done. I'm done. All right. So, you've got the Max Porter Paranormal series. I talked to other people about some of the different series and books and anthologies that you have, and some of the new projects that you're bringing with you for this year.
Well, sure. I mean, if you've ever seen me at a convention before, I have a lot of books. I've been writing for a long time, and I usually keep at least 2 or 3 different series going so that I'm not always writing the same series and get bored. So I will have just about everything there. My best-selling series is Max Porter. Ta-da! And one of the new things that I have this year is hardcovers, which I
Oh,
never had
nice.
before. And for this is the compilation. This is the first 3 books in one volume. And
Oh,
what's really nice for the compilations is the soft covers all have this cover. Okay, this is the cover for the very first book, Southern Bound, but the hardcovers also have the art for the second and
Oh,
the third
ooh.
book.
Oh,
So
nice.
oh, that's really cool.
yeah, I think it's neat. If you like art, if you like the artwork, but you don't want to buy all the individual books, and you want to save some money, that there's that. And then we also earlier this year, I at the end of last year, I closed out and finished the Parallel Society series. That is a contemporary fantasy about a woman who works in her family bookstore and learns that her grandma and her elderly friends have been saving the universe for decades and decades, and they want her to take over because it's hard to keep it up with a bad back and arthritis. And that was a 7-book series, and it's over. It's complete, done. So I put out a 2-volume compilation of that. So Now you can, instead of buying 7 individual books, you get, this is the first 3, and volume 2 has the last 4, and these are also the hardcover and paperback and everything. I always got to mention it just to make John happy. This is the Waterblade. This is the first of a trilogy I wrote for Falstaff Books. It is a high fantasy mystery mashup, and it's a trilogy. It's done. That was the first one. All 3 books will be there. And then by the time the Geekery comes around, I will have the 18th book in the Max Porter series will be out. I finished writing the rough draft yesterday, or 2 days ago. Yesterday I took the day off and did nothing. But yeah, I finished that, so it's still got to go through editing and all that stuff and the whole process. The cover's already done. So I was very excited about that, and that should be coming out in mid-July. So I'll certainly have copies of that for people who have already gone through the series. There's also the Nathan K series, and I have a couple science fiction standalones, a time travel standalone. The standalones also are now going to be in hardcover. There's been a lot of hardcover stuff going on for the last several months as we get it going up. And then that's what'll be at the Geekery. And then I've got some other projects that would be at like next year's Geekery if y'all have me back. Because earlier this year I wrote the first book of what is going to be an epic science fiction series that is essentially taking Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth and mixing it with Stargate.
Oh wow,
So,
that sounds interesting.
Thank you. So it's basically, you know, I had this thought, like the very kernel of this thought, like decades ago when I was a kid watching Buck Rogers, right? And their ship goes through this little Stargate thing, pop, and then they show space somewhere else. So there's another one, big flash of light, and the ship comes out. And I thought that's really cool. But you build one, go through it, pop out somewhere else. Somebody's got to build the other end, right, of the tunnel. Otherwise it's just this unstable wormhole.
Yeah.
So it's essentially about that, and that about the centuries that it takes to build this thing, because it's not easy you can't transport all this material. I got to go there and kind of find a planet that they can settle on, hopefully, or mine a moon or something, and so it's a big long story. It follows one family through generations and generations of this, and so that's the impetus of the idea. I wrote the first book earlier this year. The rough draft is done, and it's just, now that I'm done with this book, we're gonna go see if it's any good.
I know a lot of times people ask us, why do you have the same authors over and over at the market? And it's like, because one, they're always coming out with new stuff, and they're excellent authors.
Yes.
So you're never seeing the same 4 books on their table like each year. You're seeing a bunch of new stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. Constantly trying to bring out new things, and I'm very excited about that. And then I don't know if it'll be made, when it'll be. I don't know if it'll make it in next year. We'll see. But I've been in talks. A good friend of mine is an artist named John Jennings. He's an Eisner Award winner. He's most famous for doing the art for the adaptation of Octavia Butler's Kindred, which came out a few years ago, and it was just fantastic. And he and I have been in long talks for years now about doing some type of book that is a mixture of his art and my prose. And we have some really cool ideas for how to incorporate the two. So yeah, so it would be so that the text and the art might interact, and in some visual way. There's so many cool ideas. So we're about to. That's gone from, gee, wouldn't it be fun to do, to next week. I think we're having a meeting to actually.
Ooh, that's
really
exciting.
See if the idea. Well, I've got a whole idea now after all these years, and if he likes it, then we'll see about going forward and finding a publisher and that kind of thing. But hopefully. So that's pretty much all that's cooking that I can tell you about. That's not hush hush.
Oh, tell us about the hush hush stuff, Jim.
Oh, sure, it's
So what was the absolute first book that you wrote or got published? Was it Max Porter or was it something
no,
else?
no. So a lot of beginning authors don't quite get this, but you have to learn how to write a book. People sweat over their first book and they're trying to get it perfect, and I'm like, don't. It's gonna suck whatever you write. And unless it's the people who like get their first book published are the outliers. Okay, most people have to do it bad, figure out something about it that they can improve, do another one. So it took me about 7 books till I got one that actually was publishable. And to give you some perspective, I know Brandon Sanderson did like 14 books, I think, before he wrote anything publishable. It's not, and
But he does that
I
in a
think there are
year.
people who get away with 5 or 6, so it's what you kind of have to do it a bunch to figure out how to do it right. So the first publishable book I ever had was After the Crash, which is my standalone science fiction book, and that actually back in the day before Amazon and before self-publishing was a viable, acceptable thing that could work, pretty much you had to go through a major publisher. And so I had an agent and the whole thing, and basically there was Warner Brothers had a publishing arm called their science fiction imprint was Warner Aspect, which was long gone. Excuse me. At the time, we got back. Basically, we heard from them that they loved the book, they would buy it, except they just bought a book too similar to it a week earlier. So if we had gotten the book in about a week earlier, that would have been my first like big publishing thing, and instead it didn't happen. That didn't happen, which but that was the first. That was a good sign, at least to me. I was like, okay, I'm writing something that actually is professional. It's new writers are always trying to figure out where they are in their journey in terms of writing anything that's good, and the only way you know is you get feedback, and that was professional feedback saying, yeah, we would have given you money if someone hadn't beaten you to the finish line. So yeah, that was the first thing that was publishable. And then and it may have been, it's right in that same year of the first year when I started publishing stuff. I think Malia might have been the very first. The Malia Chronicles would have been the first novel. The very first thing was a short story collection, because I did a decade of that before I ever started doing novels. That's probably more of an answer than you wanted.
No,
that's
yeah. I think it's always interesting because we've had different writers on over the years, and everybody's story, there are things that are the same, but there are things that are totally different, or that just different aspects of it. And I think it's always helpful, especially as other hopeful writers watch and learn. So I'm gonna let Carol ask her questions that she always likes to ask.
Which is, what is one bit of advice you give a writer who is interested in writing a novel?
So as I was about to just segue into like my thing on advice, which is it's especially business advice is really hard to give, because everybody's journey is different, and part of what that makes it different is the time period you're doing it in. When I was starting out, it was not uncommon. In fact, I won't name names, but I know everybody here knows this person who basically got their entire career started off of a proposal that their agent sent to Tor, and Tor gave this individual a 3-book deal. And that was not like a big, like, wow, that's incredible. That was like, yeah, that's pretty much how it works. A proposal, maybe a chapter. Now, no publisher would look at you, even small press are not going to look at you unless you have a complete book. The only way you do a proposal, I did a proposal for the Midnight trilogy, but that was because I've known John, who's who owns Falstaff Books, I've known him since before Falstaff Books. He knows I can write. He knows I've written a zillion books, so he knows I can finish a book. So those weren't issues. It was just a matter of does he like the idea and can we get a contract together? So that's kind of always dangerous. But in terms of how to actually write a novel, like from the artistry side, that advice I can give because that doesn't change that much. And the first bit of advice I usually give people who want to write a book or even just a short story, but particularly a book, is what was taught to me is called the 6 rules of writing, which are read, 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 write, write, write. You have to read. You have to read in your genre to know, so you're not reinventing the wheel, to know and see how other people handle similar. There are certain problems. For example, if you're going to write epic fantasy, everybody writing epic fantasy has got to deal with how to, at what depth do you go for your world building? How do you handle magic systems? How do you handle, are there dragons? If there are dragons, there's so many dragons that have come before you, you should be familiar with them.
Yep.
But I also encourage people to read outside of their genre because there's so much to be learned about how to construct a book from seeing how people do it with different genre constraints or no constraints and all that. So that the best learning you can do is just simply reading with a critical eye and just trying to pick it all up. And then write is, it's writing is not, it's a skill that you learn. There's an artistry to it, but I think there's an artistry to anything you can learn a skill to. Whether it's building a house, cooking a meal, or painting a picture or writing a book. It's just the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with the basics so that you can start doing all the fancy stuff. It's kind of like when you're starting to write, that first time when you have to say, okay, my main character has entered a room, and now I have to describe this room. And that first time you do it, it's like, it probably takes you hours to figure out how to do it. I could literally, and this, I don't mean this is bragging, I've been writing for like 30 years. I've written that moment, entering a room, so many times, in so many forms, short stories, novels, and even poetry. I mean, you name it, I've done it. So I could probably just write one off the top of my head right now in a couple seconds. It's not that hard to do because it's all just muscle memory now. I know what elements need to be there for my story. I know what is just window dressing. And so I can focus on learning how to do really fancy, weird stuff that you shouldn't be bothering with when you're just starting out. So just read, write. Don't sweat it. What you're going to do in the beginning sucks. So just get it out, figure out what one aspect of why it sucks, try and fix that in your next thing you write, and then you'll find the next thing that sucks. And don't feel bad if because that never ends. I've written over 60 some novels, hundreds of short stories, and I'm going to go edit my the next Max Porter book. Actually, I started editing it this morning, and I find sentences where I can look at myself and go, "Why did you do that? You know better, Stuart." Or I'm already kind of thinking there's a scene missing somewhere in the book. I don't know where, but I can feel things aren't quite right, which means something about the book sucks. I've got to learn how to improve that, and it never ends. There's never complete mastery.
Yeah, you can't be so precious about it, can you? You have to kind of be like, you have to be able to be as direct about your own work as you would be, or in critical, not always in a negative way, but critical in a way that you can say, yep, this is too much, or that's not enough, and I need to fix that.
Oh yeah, and that's probably one of the hardest things new writers have to get is to develop a thick. I mean, you have to develop a thick skin from reviews and other people reading your work, but you have to develop a thick, honest skin to yourself to be able to see those things and just be like, just because I love this character or I love this moment or this sentence or even this word, if it's not serving the book, then it's not, shouldn't be there. People are paying me money to read these books. They should be getting their money's worth and not be getting, some wandering thing that has nothing to do with anything, that doesn't belong there, because that only ruins the story. You've seen one of the best ways to develop that skill is the fact that, again, is to read a lot. We're all readers. We know what it's like to be a reader and read a book and feel like they're wasting your time, or feel like you're reading a book and you feel like this author does not know what he or she's doing. You don't trust the author. Or on the opposite, where you start reading a book and you're like, I don't know where this is going, but this is my favorite author. I trust them. We'll see where it goes. And then they pay it off in the long run.
Yeah.
That's learning how to do that, and learning how to put yourself in those shoes.
So one of the things that I think is really great that you're doing as well is you have a TikTok account where you have some of these very honest conversations about the writing process and giving that advice to other authors. So if people are not following Stuart on TikTok, and not enough of you are, I've checked, you need to be, because this is somebody who actually lives the life, like you said, written hundreds of things, been published, been working the genre, and is really getting out there. So I appreciate the fact that you are willing to have those blunt conversations and give out that information as well, because I think that's important for people to hear it from somebody who's actually doing the work. So
TikTok's a hard one to get. It's such a short thing. And actually, there is, if you join now, you can go look at the old stuff. There's not going to be anything new for a short time. We're kind of retooling some ideas. It's one of the little hush-hush things. So there's something else in the work that works. That's a longer format that we'll be cutting pieces out of to put into TikTok.
Yeah.
Once we figure out how that's all going to work, then it'll kind of get alive again. But one of the longer form things, this is separate, but coming up in what is it, mid-July to late July is Congregate and Saga, and I'll be speaking at Saga again this year. Saga is a writers conference, and that's a great opportunity because you'll come and convention panels are awesome. You get to see 5 different authors talk on a subject, ask a few questions, but it's because it's only like 50 minutes and there's everybody's getting, there's 5 authors or whatever, you only get kind of a surface level. But with something like Saga, you'll come and it'll just be me talking for like an hour and a half or longer, and oftentimes later into the hallway when be able to, and that's the thing, you can like afterwards come right up to me and we can talk. I don't have to, I have, that's the one class I teach. Afterwards, I got plenty of time to sit there and really get in depth. And in my case, I'll be talking about how to negotiate contracts. So,
awesome.
So there's business stuff, and then there's art. Last year, I did a whole thing on writing fight scenes. So there's all, if you're a beginning writer and you're in it's in Winston-Salem. So if you're in North Carolina, so if you're in that area, that's something, a great way to do it too. It's
well, and Misty Massey told us a great way to do fight scenes, and that's to have your husband jump off the roof of the car several times in a row so you can see how the hero lands. So, we've got it fixed. Matt, get up on the roof. I got to get you to go. Well, Stuart, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. We cannot wait to have you back at the Geekery market in the fall. You are one of the few that we don't put on rotation because, as Carol said, there's always new stuff. There's always new stuff. Other people, we have to rotate them. You don't have anything new this year, come back next year. You are not one of those ones, which is always great. So, I do have to talk to you about, doing the lightsabers in the middle of the hallway, but, other than that, but other than that, we cannot wait to see you again in November, and we'll see you at Saga. So,
well, thank you for having me at Geekery again, and thank you for having me on this show. I'm really excited.
Yeah,
thank you for joining us.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
That was an episode of Guardians of the Geekery. Thank you for listening. Check us out at guardiansofthegeekery.com and stay tuned for more content.